All right, I'm going to go over the warm-up and have this problem with the juggler, and the juggler starting by throwing the ball from a height of 5 feet. So that's going to change our problem a little bit different from what the ones were yesterday. The initial vertical velocity is 16 feet per second squared. How long does a juggler have to catch the ball before it hits the ground? So you're going to use this equation, and vertical velocity is going to be plugged in for v sub 0. So when you do that, the starting height, the reason why this is 5 and not 0 is because the starting height is 5 feet. All right, so that is your function that you're going to need to use with the initial velocity of 16 feet per second squared. That's going to be substituted in here. And what you're going to do is now you need to factor it and find the zeros. So we're setting the whole thing equal to 0 because we want to know how long it takes before the ball hits the ground. All right, setting that equal to 0, negative 16 is A, 5 is C, so we want factors of A times C, which when we multiply those together is going to give us negative 80, and they want to sum to 16. So making a list of those factors, we have 1 and 80, 2 and 40, 4 and 20. So if we take a negative 4 and a positive 20, when we multiply that, it's going to give us negative 80. And when we add them together, it's going to give us a positive 16. Okay, now let me show you what some people were doing. They said, okay, I know that it's minus 4 and plus 20, so I'm just going to say that it is x minus 4, x plus 20. If you do that, you're not going to get, when you FOIL it out, you're not going to get that negative 16t squared. So when this is not a coefficient of 1, you have to write it out and rewrite the middle term. So we're rewriting 16t using the minus 4t plus 20t. And when we do that, we can divide both of these by negative 4t. You want this to be a positive, so that's why we're dividing it by a negative 4t. That will leave us, when we divide this by negative 4t, that gives us 4t. Divide this by negative 4t, that's going to give us a plus 1. Here we can pull out a 5 out of both of them, and when we do, we divide that by 5 and that by 5. We have that set equal to 0. So we have taking out the parentheses 4t plus 1 here. That comes out in front, and when you do that, cover up these, you're left with negative 4t plus 5, and that's equal to 0. So zero product property says if you multiply two things together and you get 0, the first one has to be 0, the second one has to be 0, or they're both equal to 0. That's why you set the factors equal to 0, and when you do that, you're going to end up with t equals negative 1/4 and t equals 5/4. And it doesn't make sense to have negative times, so we're just going to cross that one off. And we can change the 5/4 to 1 1/4 second, or 1.25 seconds. All right, the next thing that I want to do is to go over 3 questions from your homework assignment. And the first one I want to look at is number 6. And we want factors of A times C, so factors of 4 that sum to negative 5. Okay, now I have this written over here because, as I already mentioned, some people are factoring, they're getting their factors in their table and just jumping right to the factored form. So here we're listing factors. If I take negative 1 times negative 4, I get a positive 4, but when I add them together, I get a negative 5, which is the combination that I want. This answer is not x minus 1, x minus 4. This coefficient on the x squared term is not 1, so you have to rewrite them. So please be careful about that. And one way that you can check, again, is if you have this and you would FOIL this out, that would give you x squared minus 4x minus x plus 4, which is x squared minus 5x plus 4. Not the same thing as this. Okay, let's continue on with this problem. We're rewriting the middle term 5x in terms of the factors that we found. So we're going to rewrite it as 2x squared minus x minus 4x plus 2, set it equal to 0. Here we can pull out an x, So we're left with 2x minus 1. Here we can pull out a minus. So always take the sign with the number. We're going to pull out a negative 2. When we divide that, we'll get 2x. When we divide by negative 2, we'll end up with negative 1. Setting that equal to 0. Now we're going to pull out the parentheses that are identical here. So the 2x minus 1, 2x minus 1, they both have that in common. When we pull that out, we're left with x minus 2. So setting those both equal to 0 and solving, you should have had 1/2, x equals 1/2, or x equals 2. And if you want to check that on a test or quiz, substitute the 1/2 in here, solve it, it should equal 0, and then try the 2, solve it, and it should equal 0. All right, now just a reminder with directions so you don't get confused. If you are asked to find the zeros, the problem is going to be given to you in this form, f of x. If you're asked to find the roots, the problem is going to be given to you as an equation without the f of x notation. You use the same technique to solve. Set them equal to 0, factor, and then set each factor equal to 0. So that's just basically how the problem is given to you, is if they'll ask for zeros or roots. All right, let's look at number 16. Number 16, you were given zeros and you had to find the function that could have -4 and -4 as zeros. So that means these would be your answers. So you would set x equal -4, x equal to -4. Those are both the solutions to the quadratic. Okay, now we're going to work backwards. So we're going to add 4 to the other side on both of those. And we end up with x plus 4 equals 0. So we have x plus 4 as a factor, and we also have another x plus 4 as a factor. So what that's going to do, we're going to multiply those together. So we'll FOIL them, and we end up with x squared plus 8x plus 16. So if you want to check to see that that's correct, take your 0, substitute it back in here, square it, multiply it by, and when I say the 0, I mean -4. Square it, add it to 8 times -4, add it to 16, and you should end up with the answer 0. All right, last one I want to go over is number 46, the stunt woman question. She's starting from a building that's 73 feet high, and she lands on an airbag that's 9 feet. So she's not ending on the ground here. She's ending on an airbag that's 9 feet. So that's going to be a little bit different than the previous question that you had. So they gave you this to use. And since we're not going to end at a height of 0, we have to change this to 9. So changing that to 9. Now, we really don't have to factor this one because we only have one term that has a t in it. So we'll just get t by itself. We'll subtract the 70, and that should be a 3. Okay, so that's now changed to subtract 73 from both sides, and that's going to give us a -64. So we have negative 16t squared is going to equal -64. We can divide both sides by -16, and we have t squared equals 4. Taking the square root of both sides, we end up with t equals plus or minus 2 seconds. And it doesn't make sense to have negative time, so we're just going to say that t equals 2 seconds. All right, last thing I want to go over is what you're doing completing the square. Well, actually, I'm going to go over a little bit of your homework assignment too, but let's look at your video notes. And with your video notes on this one, the coefficient of your equation was not, or coefficient of your quadratic term was not x squared. So first I put this